Perfect. I'm getting technological.
We are live. All right. Welcome back, folks. After that brief break, we are joined with representatives from the National Guard. We have Major General Knight joined in the gallery with Brigadier General Harder and thank you, sir. And we're doing a Guard 101 with folks. We do have a lot of members of this committee who have various levels of contact, immersion, and experience with your organizations. So it's good to see you. And the table is yours, General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First order of business, I would like to make it clear that it needs to be evidenced. I'm going to present these to Representative Mary Catherine Stone, but her duty shall be to share these with the committee. Those are Mozart candies. I was in Austria and Germany for the past 8 days.
Thank you.
Never go anywhere empty-handed. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, I can give you, I think, an overview very quickly of ongoing operations with the Vermont National Guard, and then get into some of the details of perhaps the Vermont National Guard 101, how we're built and how we're accessed and what we do. I think that might be helpful. Might be redundant for some, but always good to revisit. But right now, we remain a very busy organization. Our Air Guard, currently members of our Air Guard and some of our aircraft are working in the Indo-Pacific with our allies there. The focus is interoperability. We've got about 275 of our airmen currently deployed. Should be for about the next 90 days, and then we'll get them back home. But the focus on interoperability and taking things that they have done on a smaller scale, what we call agile combat employment. If you look at the way previous deployments or previous campaigns for the Air Force, they worked out of large, hard stand static installations. That is not going to be the case in the event of future conflict. We know that. So we are practicing now, and in my view, really setting the way ahead for the Air Force and how we do this. We're working out of disaggregated locations that are very logistically far-flung and therefore logistically challenged. Resources are going to be scarce. It'll be very austere. That's the environment we want them to train in. So with our allies, they're going to be coming back with a lot of lessons learned to share with the Air Force and specifically the F-35 and wider enterprise on air campaigning. So it's going to be important for us. I just came back, as I noted, from Austria and Germany. I attended the Theresian Academy Military Ball. So we've facilitated through our Guard a partnership, a memorandum of agreement with Norwich University, our senior military college, and the Theresian Military Academy, which is where their officer corps is trained. And just this past December, the first 2 Austrian cadets finished their first semester there. They will attend for 1 semester and then go back home. So those engagements are important because eventually we did this right. It goes beyond student exchange, but also becomes faculty exchange. And as we've discussed with my caucus co-chairs, eventually I'd like to grow this into legislative opportunities to go to our 3 state partners. I think there's value there to show how we do business and mutually beneficial because there are some subtleties in how they govern. So that'll be important for us. But a part of that, in May of this year, May into June, most of our 86th Infantry Brigade, a little more than 1,000 members will be traveling overseas, working in what we call an immediate response series of exercises that they'll do in Europe. Majority of them will be in Greece, but a significant number, our infantry battalion, will be working in Krivolak training area with our partner, North Macedonia, but they'll be embedded in working with 7 NATO allies. So again, the scale of it is challenging, but those opportunities, the training benefit that comes with that, what we would call collective training, I can't replicate that here. Not at Fort Drum, not at Fort Johnson, Louisiana. That experience could be remarkably beneficial for us. Again, the Army and NATO, but as a retention tool, those folks will stay in the Guard because of that experience. So recruiting remains a challenge. I will talk about it at every opportunity. This is why you, as legislators, you're my centers of influence. Every one of you has reached into your respective constituencies via newsletter, emails, whatever that is. I would really encourage you I would ask you to share the Guard story, the work that we do, both nationally and internationally, and the impact that this small state has. I think my caucus co-chairs know, and forgive me for being redundant, I will use the state partnership program as an example of that. What I do is fine. Key leader engagements, that's a shaping operation for what we do together in the future, going beyond the military to military partnership. But if I go back a year ago, June, our medical readiness exercise, we've done 8 of those in Senegal. One of our state partners, we've partnered with them for 16 years now, almost 17 years. And the medical readiness exercise are my military providers, my traditional drilling members, some of my full-time members, but my doctors, my physician's assistants, my nurse practitioners, combat medics, medical technicians who fix equipment, lab technicians. We sent 30 of them to Senegal. 3 came to join us from New Hampshire because they have a partnership with Cabo Verde and have never done this before. So they're going as an experience to pay it forward basically to their partnership. What was different about this event is we made it multilateral. We brought 2 Austrian army doctors with us. Ideally, it would have been as observers. As it ended up, it was much more than that. So working in the far southeast of the country at 3 different local clinics in Kédougou, Goudiri, and Tambacounda, working with Senegalese military providers and civilian providers, they saw 791 patients in 12 days. And they did a little bit of everything. Physical therapy, routine checkups, OBGYN, labor and delivery. When I can go to the president of a country or come back here and tell this story to you that it was one of my combat medics that revived a Senegalese infant at birth, I can't buy that kind of marketing. I cannot buy that type of experience. So they will come back. That mother will always know that it was because of that partnership and because of our National Guard member that her baby's here. That happened 2 years consecutive. It was a nurse 2 years ago. So those are pretty impactful. When I can tell you my physical therapist, we have those now. That's a recent development in the Army. At least one of my physical therapists, they got people out of their wheelchairs walking for the first time in years. Those are pretty profound impacts. That's the kind of stuff that I would love to share. Closer to home, I think I've probably explained it to many of you before, the Partner Recruiting Initiative for Military Employers. Been very focused on workforce development here in Vermont. No secret to anybody here. We need to grow our workforce. We need to grow the experience base and certainly keep the talent that we have. So to that end, we kind of stole something from the active duty, their program for youth success. And then we combined that with the interview opportunity program that Lieutenant Colonel Megan Smith, my public affairs officer in the Air Guard, came up with. We align our members with at least an interview with at least 5 employers, participating employers. Right now we have 20 employer partners as a part of Prime. We're growing that. I think we have a like number in the queue. I spoke with my team and I said, this is great for military members, uniform members, but what are we doing to grow this? So this year we've changed that memorandum of agreement to be inclusive of dependents, so spouses, working age kids, and we're also including internships with some of those partners, some of those employers. They want folks to come there. If it's a college student, they can do an internship during the summer, and they could align them for employment when they graduate. So a lot of goodness there, but again, something else that I think we can publicize and get that word out to the constituency. Just tremendous. You can tell our story. It's very important for me to remove the mystery about service in the Guard. Said it many times before, it is not for everybody. We know that, just like going to the legislature, simply not for everybody. But if we can find those folks that have the opportunity, the desire, and want to take that opportunity, we'd really like to talk to them. One other aspect on recruiting, because it's my favorite topic, we're growing our efforts to reach out to the prior service market. If you're not familiar with the term, prior service means somebody who's coming off of that, not a retiree. We'll take those two, but somebody coming off of active duty after their first term of service. So they can be 4 or 6 years. They will be a junior or mid-grade non-commissioned officer, a junior officer. If they come off of active duty, they can continue their service in the Guard. So that, I've probably done my math for you before. If I use Fort Drum as a small example, Fort Drum has 15,000 soldiers, active duty soldiers. If their attrition rate is about 12%, and it probably is, that's probably average across the force. That means there's 1,800 soldiers separating from Fort Drum every year. And why would we not market Vermont and our Guard to not that, just that installation, every active duty installation across the force? Because if they're prior service, we can put them to work. So that's been kind of the pivot for us, is to focus more on those transition teams. Every installation has them, every service has them. So we're building that relationship. So that's going to be important for us. So I can talk Guard one-on-one if you like, Mr. Chair.
Seems like a logical next step, General.
Any questions thus far? I know I talk a lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. Any questions about the deployment that's currently going on or upcoming? You did say 1,000 members in May and June?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is on
Big
top of the
number.
already deployed plus minus 300.
Yes, sir. And we also have an additional in the ballpark of 60 who are in what we call individual mobilization augmentees. They're on a periodic mobilization schedule. They're within the different combatant commands and supported by the units already in theater. So somewhere north of 325 of our Air Guard currently deployed. And we always have folks deployed. We call it deployed, activated there at Guard Bureau, Air Guard, or Army Readiness Center. Some folks working at European Command, all the different combatant commands. One of my colonels is at the Combined Arms Center, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, as the senior guard advisor to the commanding general. So good business for us, great experience for them, but it helps us down the road.
Remind me if you didn't say already, the total number of guardsmen and women that you have right now.
I should have about 3,700. I should have 1,100 in the Air Guard and 2,600 in the Army Guard. I need 100 more to round out my Air National Guard. I need about 700 more to round out the Army Guard to become whole. And that's a challenge for us. This is why I've been focused. That's why recruiting is always going to be the long pole in the tent for me. If we don't fix that, we will lose force structure. And with that, expand on that a little bit, our mission might change. We might lose what we have currently. And that would almost certainly have an impact on our capability and capacity to do what's asked of us.
Representative Hooper of Randolph, did you have a question?
I think I asked you a year ago about this, how much time you had before that changes. And you said like 2 years. So now there's 1 year left to fix
It's
it.
coming. It's coming. We're already hearing it now. Part of it, the bigger picture, the bigger discussion is modernization of the Army. So we could, the quote for it, we could become right sized if we modernize with what the Army does. So what they've done, it's a complex undertaking, but instead of having an infantry brigade that has all of the enabling forces with it, like combat engineers and cavalry scouts, we have our Cav squadron is here in Vermont. Our Brigade Engineer Battalion is here in Vermont. If the Army Guard modernizes to do what the active duty is doing, we will lose those two battalions. They will go under the division construct, probably aligned with New York. I don't have the vacancies filled now. So it won't change anything. It will right size us, but it'll change the mission. Now, if we don't, we can do that. Or the Army, General George, the Chief of Staff of the Army, who met with my brigade commander last week, very focused on numbers. He will say, hey, we don't need an infantry brigade that can't maintain its personnel readiness in New England. And then that resource, the brigade in its entirety, which impacts multiple New England states, goes somewhere west of the Mississippi.
How many vacancies?
700 in the Army right now, at least. And about 100 in my Air National Guard.
Which is an improvement from a year ago.
About static for the Army, a little bit better for the air.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, very quickly.
Representative Kaufman?
Yes, sir.
That 700, is that across which MOSs are hurting the most? Where are we looking at the most short?
Predominantly infantry and the support services and the Cav Scouts in particular are in pretty dire straits. So these are all military terms. 19 Delta would be a Cav Scout, 11 Bravo would be infantry. And then maintainers. those would be, I think, the big maintainers and the support staff that we need to run the organization.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
More questions? Please proceed, sir.
So as you know, we have two missions. One is our homeland mission here. We respond at the call of the governor, as we've done over the past year plus. Look at flooding in July a year ago, flooding in December, and then flooding again in this July. That is a central part of the Guard. So we were able to push out our liaisons, our quick reaction forces. In this case, actually save lives, working with local first responders and swift rescue teams, swiftwater rescue teams. So the domestic mission is very important. We maintain that capability. Go back to COVID, doing food distribution, 3.2 million meals over the course of what I call COVID summer. With the Vermont Food Bank, reaching out to those folks that are in need. I forget the number, probably 75,000 vaccines administered, working with local agencies, and in particular, focusing on a particular point of pride for me, is breaking down the barriers between the Guard and our new American communities who are very reluctant to work with us. Once we were there, they didn't want anybody else but us. So that was a win for me. Then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we've got our federal missions ongoing. Some of those are planned. We know when they're coming. Sometimes not so much. Go back to 22, just after so February 22, Russia invaded Ukraine. And it was about 90 days later, our Air Guard on very short notice picked up their mission and were flying with our NATO allies in support of what they call the NATO air policing mission. So challenging at times, but I don't know that there's another organization in the inventory that can do what we do. Thus my interest in growing it and making it that much stronger. We could play more if we had more. We have our mission, vision, and values. We provide ready forces to defend our nation and serve our country. Pretty straightforward. We are fully ready. We're values-based, professional, and connected to our communities. That's a unique Guard thing. It's particularly unique here in Vermont, given the size of our state, the nature of our relationships. And we will abide by integrity, excellence, and selfless service. So we're unique as a Guard. And again, this is a different narrative or different approach to understanding this. We are the primary combat reserve of the Army and the Air Force. So a lot of terms are thrown around post global war on terror. The Guard was for a long time viewed as a strategic reserve. We don't need you until kind of an emergency break lasts, then we'll go do the thing. Well, the global war on terror. So for over 20 years, the Guard was alongside active duty as what became an operational reserve. So that's fine. I don't know that they can do without us, which is one of the reasons I am on the Adjutant General Association. We work closely with other organizations to make sure that there's parity in fielding, parity in benefits for the Guard as compared to active duty. We're not there yet, but that's a part of what I do. But within that, we fall under the Air Force or the Army. In Title 32 status, I work for the governor. And obviously, as the only legislatively elected Adjutant General, we had these conversations. But when we're federalized under Title 10, then we will fall under the active duty chain of command. That would be while deployed. Sometimes there's a hybrid of both. If you have Title 10 forces, for instance, the Army Reserve or somebody from the defense coordinating element, and I think they're in Boston, but if they came to help us, you would have to have a dual status commander. I have no purview over a Title 10 officer. Until you have the status of dual status commander, then you have purview over both. If a Title 10 force comes in here, I don't know of any governor who would allow a Title 10 officer to have control over National Guard troops. That's the importance of that designation. And then we have our military department. So General Harder is the Deputy Adjutant General. He is in a civilian status. He works specifically as the leader of the military department. He covers Veterans Affairs, administration. He deals with hiring, firing, administrative action, disciplinary matters, and certainly our budget as a military department. And we're at multiple locations throughout the state. Have we moved the Cyber Operations Squadron yet?
Organizationally, not physically.
Okay. So the Air Guard primarily two locations, obviously at the fighter wing across from Burlington International Airport. And then we have our cyber operations squadron in Northfield. Their mission has moved to the fighter wing installation in South Burlington. Physically, they haven't moved yet, but that's going to happen. They will move. We're working on consolidating, and again, this is another tie-in to the importance of recruiting. I have a vision for building 4 super armories across the state. Armories that would house multiple units, have us quicker access to interstates, high-speed avenues that we would need in case of domestic emergency. Otherwise, we're trying to maintain 18 broken armories across the state. They were built when I was a kid. Actually, when I was an infant. So we need to fix that. I can't maintain them. Money doesn't come for them. It's a failing proposition. Conversely, the nasty cycle here is if I don't have enough people in the Guard, in essence, boots on the ground, I can't build an installation. I have to have X percentage before I will receive the money to stick one shovel in the ground and start building an installation. And if I can't, well, we saw what happened last year with Bennington. I had a vision to build one of those readiness centers in Bennington. And I don't have the personnel strength to do it. So that's why we need to fix things. So for state and federal funding, very quickly, all told, 217 million, a little over 200 million for operations and maintenance. Or is that paying allowances? Paying allowances. We'll give you the breakdown of that. I can tell you that about 152 million specifically is paying allowances coming into Vermont for both the Air and Army National Guard. Again, come back to recruiting. If I filled all those vacancies, you would have tens of millions of dollars more coming into Vermont. So that's another part of that conversation. The numbers here. Paul. The slides you have here, I won't need to get into details on those. We have projected what we call MILCON construction projects between now and the end of 27. We have tens of millions of dollars coming into Vermont. Challenge we're running into now with military construction is simply cost overrun. And part of that challenge, and again, it's something that I do, is to work with National Guard Bureau to streamline the process. We are forced under the Buy America, Build America Act to work with the Made in America office. I had $31 million, 8 projects, $31 million on hold because we couldn't get a waiver to get the equipment we needed to build things because of that act. Made the argument. I'm not sure that was the intent of the act. I was told that is the intent of the act. Everything has to be a waiver. If I had $31 million on hold, what do the rest of the National Guard have on hold? Clumsy. I'll work with our congressional delegation to fix that. And I think most of the rest of it we've covered. And if I have any questions, we do a lot of different things within the Office of Veterans Affairs. They are remarkable folks. Unfortunately, like many, they are having a talent issue. Getting and retaining folks there. I tell you, they do significant work for us, taking care of veterans. And it'll be in the legislative report comes out. They have grown by millions of dollars, the benefits for those veterans, education benefits, voc rehab, all of those things that we value to take care of them. So still a lot of work to do. 2 big legislative initiatives. One would be, and I think most of you are aware of it, as you know, our education benefit for second bachelor's degrees and master's degrees is a pilot that sunsets on 1 July of 25. We would like to see that codified into law long-term. Our members take great benefit of that. I think that's another untold story is the level of education and professionalism of our force. Their level of education is impressive. And it's not just officers, it's enlisted members. Even in the Air Force, you will have at least an associate's degree before you can achieve a certain rank. So that's great for us. Professional military education makes for professional soldiers and airmen. The other issue, and I will talk about it from a workforce development perspective, and as I told the chair, asking the question as a constituent, I will give you one answer. The question is the adjutant general. I would tell you that not taxing military pensions is critical to our success workforce development. Mr. Chair, I don't know, or I could ask your clerk if I'd sent the 4-page paper. Rep. Hango, I believe you have that, the 4-page information
I
paper.
have it. Would you like it posted on our committee website?
That would be fine, ma'am.
I would like that posted for today, please,
Okay,
for sure.
I will send it to.
Representative Cooper,
Will.
but we got a little chat break here. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was curious, Buy America, Build America, can you tell us more about that?
So it's mandated by Congress, it's law. Anything that pertains to,
Is that all right?
Please, no, this is.
anything that pertains to infrastructure, public infrastructure
Yeah.
that takes in federal dollars. The parts and equipment used to build that, the construction materials must be American sourced.
Oh, interesting.
So even if I give you a small example of the frustration with that, while I understand the intent, sure, it's a very noble undertaking. I can't fix the boiler system in one of my aging armories because nobody makes, for instance, the fuse panel.
Right.
And I'm waiting months for a workaround to get my armory back online. Because the fuse panels, fuse boxes, parts aren't made here.
So this has also been a cost and construction timeline barrier to a lot of the housing initiatives as well.
Okay,
Would you also like at this?
good example.
Posted, okay.
So
And I can, yes, sir.
Which armory is that?
I think we got it fixed. And it might have been, I'm not sure, Hank, if you recall, it might have been Newport.
Newport,
I'm not
and
sure.
some
They're all-
with Westminster.
Yeah. Yep, all those armories are 55, 60 years old.
I was thinking, well, I looked that up.
Mr. Chair, I could dive into the importance of workforce development if you'd like, or I can leave it to questions and give you your time back.
Let's do that.
there. You good? Yep.
Yeah, shall I continue?
Please, sir. Oh, yeah, that's why I thought we were at. You're waiting on me to like call that one. Sorry.
So at present, Vermont ranks pretty low. Depends on which website you go to. Kiplinger's, Wallet Hub, when it comes to best places for military retirees. You go to Wallet Hub, we're 49th. That's a decrease from a year ago, we were 47th, which wasn't much of an improvement over being 51st. So there are things that we can do as a state. Part of it, and I mentioned this to House Ways and Means Committee this morning very briefly. This is not a magic solution, but it is a tool. And if you look at what's currently on the books and you look at other states around us, 48 other states provide greater tax benefits to military retirees. If I look at who's retiring in Vermont, in the past 6 years, we've had 475 members of our Guard retire. They've not stayed here, nor are they coming here. So that's a talent drain for us. I mentioned to the committee earlier, I'm an old soldier. I've been doing this probably longer than Representative Nugent's been alive, as I mentioned before. But a lot of folks can retire at 20 and do, and they leave. So I use as an example, if a military member retires at age 18, a member of the Guard, they're 38 years old. You can bring that active duty person here who's actually getting a pension immediately upon retirement. Or, and it's in the information paper, somebody who retires from the Guard at 38 will have to wait till age 60 to draw that pension, what we would call a gray area retiree, which is why you see the disparity in who's actually getting paid as a retiree in the 300 who are here as a gray area retiree pending payment at age 60. So what's currently in law, and the Joint Fiscal Office has greater detail, but not taxing the first 10,000 if they make 50,000 or less in pension. It's appreciated, and it also impacts about nobody. Because in our military, if you are an E5, a sergeant, you will probably not be eligible for retirement because you haven't met your professional military education requirements or rank requirements to stay beyond a certain point, what we would call a retention control point. The Air Guard has a different term for it. So the caveat to that is the blended retirement system. So there's a legacy retirement, which would be me. I would get my high 3. That's wonderful. Kids who join now will be under the blended retirement system. So they can, it's essence of 401k, they can take their money with them. I think they're vested in 2 years. So they can stay for 10 years, they can stay for 12 years, and then take their talent someplace else and derive at least some benefit by taking it with them. We offset that loss of talent by providing what we would call a mid-career incentive, a retention incentive to keep them longer, because that's what we'd like to do, obviously. But in the end, we're not retaining a whole lot of talent here in Vermont, nor are we drawing it here. And again, It's not a magic solution, but imagine if I had that tool along with all the other things that Vermont does. I think we'd be in a good spot. We could do better. And that was really my whole message. There's other elements of this that came out in House Ways and Means this morning. I think it's in the bill. We have about 750 survivors here in Vermont. They are part of what we call the Survivor Benefit Plan. Widows and widowers of military retirees who pay a 6.5% premium of their pension into that program. And so they're taxed as well. And that, to me, we wanted to get that a couple of years ago and it didn't get it across the line. What I did furnish in the paper, if you look at Vermont and a like-sized population in surrounding states or neighboring states, even states across the US, while they do have a slightly bigger population, they also have accordingly larger population of military retirees and derive an according benefit. So I think the numbers I saw from testimony this morning from the Joint Fiscal Office was about $90 million a year coming in for a relatively small population of 3,900 military retirees. Imagine if we grew that. Imagine if we did that 2 or 3 times and we grew that population. And never mind what goes on in larger states like my colleagues in Nevada or Colorado. I get it. They have a much larger population. They also have a greater infrastructure capability. They have military installations. We do not. They have 500,000 military retirees. Imagine the economic benefit. So my goal is to grow the Guard, but also bring some workforce and talent into Vermont and keep them here. And I think, unless you would like additional, Mr. Chair, we could talk about why we serve. We could talk about why the Guard, why the military is different when it comes to pensions, but it's up to you.
I think both of those points would be really important to have on the record. I know Representative Morgan touched on that a little bit during his testimony this morning in Ways and Means, but to reiterate for this audience would be great. Thank you.
Thank you,
My
ma'am.
head was in the same place, so thank you for using my words.
So we've had conversations in previous sessions and I've heard the traffic that there's a kind of conflating the military with other services or other organizations. It's apples and oranges to me. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for our first responders. They do great work, as do our teachers, law enforcement, anybody who would fall perhaps into the same argument. I will tell you that the military is different. We're an oath to support and defend the Constitution. We get deployed. We get deployed to places where most people don't want to go. We volunteer to do that. And I'm not being melodramatic, but I've seen pretty incredible things. All of us who've been deployed to different locations have seen things that you hope you never had to see. Representative Kaufman and I were at the same place at the same time in Al-Anbar province, Iraq. While I capstone experience in my career, it also meant that I was away from home for 18 months. 12 months of that was overseas. And this is true across the Guard, certainly across the military, but specific to Vermont. It is not melodramatic to say we are missing birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. And we're close to things that people normally are not. I lost 16 of my colleagues in Al-Anbar province in Iraq, killed in action. I've lost a number that I've simply lost count of because of aberrant health conditions, because they were deployed to areas where there were burn pits and other toxins. And yet still, they chose to serve. I may have shared this story before. I have my medical evacuation company, my Black Hawk helicopters. They served 4 years ago in Central Command, which means Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, other parts of Southwest Asia. And that same unit was mobilized again 3 years later. A year ago, January, we got them back. And I said then, I couldn't believe it, they had flown over those 2 deployments, 600 medical evacuation missions. I was wrong. They flew over 900. In that austere environment, working out of 8 austere locations, that unit did not miss or fail to make a single mission. That's unheard of. It's incredible. I don't think there's another organization in the inventory that can do that. But I also know I have combat medics that have seen things that they never should have seen. One in another state took his own life about a month ago. That's hard because my aviators work with that soldier. Two of our soldiers received Purple Hearts. They received awards because, three of them actually, they were on the scene when a terminal attack drone hit outside their bunker. They themselves, being injured, picked up an active duty aviator who was grievously injured, fight their own condition, put them in the Black Hawk, triaged him, stabilized him, and got him to Baghdad, where they were then grounded because they themselves were injured. Where do you find people like that? So when somebody says, I've said this before, if anybody asked me that question, and I agree with you, Representative Morgan, we're unique. Are we special? No, we're special. I don't view it as special. I view it as different. And I would love to find more people that do that. But again, I come back when we're making comparisons. I don't know that that's fair. We volunteer for this. That I do understand. And I will continue to advocate for this Guard, certainly for the state, to get every tool that I possibly can to set the conditions for whoever comes after me to have a strong and resilient National Guard.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think it's a really important message, and thank you all veterans and survivors for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Rep. Morgan.
I'd be happy to synopsize what I said in testimony if you all want to hear that, but if you don't want to hear that, I don't want to take your time, but I'm willing to synopsize that, to add to what General Knight said. I'll just quickly read it. It's not long. I get out the formalities out of it. I just put, for full disclosure purposes, I'm a retired colonel from the Vermont Air Guard. Worked with Generals Knight and Harder for, and this is the truth, decades, not years, not several years, but decades. We spent, all of us collectively probably have well over 120 years probably of service. And I'm not looking for a special pat on that back, but I do think it deserves some deference. And like we say in this body a lot, we feel there are voices missing. There are voices missing here. And so I'm that voice for those people. And I'm constantly asked by people, and the general alluded to it, when are you guys going to do something about that? And these are people that are voting with their boots, as we say in the military, and they're leaving. They're going to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, to states that do not tax their pensions. General alluded to this too. What I was asked by somebody affiliated with our body a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, I think 3 years ago, what makes you so special? Again, like you said, we're not special, we're just unique. We'll never consider ourselves above anybody or better than any. That's not the point of this. I quoted Calvin Coolidge's quote, but to get to the bottom of it, you've all heard the 1928 speech where he spoke to, I could not look upon the peaks of Ascutney, Killington, Mansfield, and Equinox without being moved in a way that no other scene could move me. It was here that I first saw the light of day. Here I received my bride. Here my dead lie pillowed on the loving breasts of our everlasting hills. Should put my glasses on, I guess, here. I love Vermont because of her hills and valleys, her scenery and invigorating climate, most of all because of her indomitable people. They're a race of pioneers who have almost beggared themselves to serve others. If the spirit of liberty should vanish in other parts of the Union, and support of our institution should languish, they could all be replenished from the generous store held by the people of this brave little state of Vermont. And I think many of you have heard and seen that quote in print. And I went on to say, ladies and gentlemen, the soldiers, sailors, and airmen that have chosen to stay in Vermont with retired pensions have beggared themselves to serve you in our beloved state and nation. All you have to do is talk to some old vets like us to tell you about what makes us unique. And General alluded to this. We've served collectively. When I say we, it's all of us. And some on more degrees than others, have given much more than some than others. But we've served in austere environments, fighting what I always call the away game, which is what you want us to fight. You don't want to have the military fighting the home game. I think we can all collectively agree on that. That does not end well when you fight the home game. These folks endure separations, birthdays, graduations, births, weddings, the list goes on. Many of them are ranked witnesses the journal talked to death, destruction, and live nightmares of poor conditions have left them scarred with serious and deep PTSD issues. There's the old quote of a veteran is one that has written a blank check to the United States of America for up to and including their life. And I went on to, with this individual's permission, to say many don't realize that we have within our ranks a Gold Star father, recently elected Representative Michael Southworth from East Walden. Would tell you that his son that was killed in Afghanistan on one of our deployments was certainly unique. And so are the men and women that served left and right of him. And so I think that paints a pretty good picture of what, and I think that those people that have served in those unique capacities deserve that deference. And yeah, like I closed it with, there's a little bit more, but I closed it with it. Thank you for the House members, 75 at this point, and I think some silently did not sign on, but will support, but 75 of our 150 members in the House signed on to that bill. And we have 21 that have signed on to a sister bill in the Senate. So I find that very encouraging. And as I think we all know, the governor's been pleading for this for years. So anyway, that was a synopsis. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. Thank you for being willing to testify this morning in Ways and Means on that. It's much appreciated. And I will mention there are 2 other reps who were inadvertently missed who would have loved to have signed on to that. So we're actually over the threshold of
Yes.
50%.
Well, and I think there's several that were silent that were
Yeah, well,
supporting
these
later.
are folks who would have liked to, so
Overly, yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
bad about that. They're understanding. So any questions for the generals?
I need to step away for a meeting with the speaker. Madam Vice Chair has the table for the duration of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will catch up shortly.
And should you have the opportunity to prevail upon the speaker that the Adjutant General would love to do a state of the guard, that'd be awesome.
Adding that to the list.
I am an opportunist if nothing else.
Well, that is true.
Rep Stone?
I have a few questions written down. Do you have additional resources for members coming off active duty to help navigate the transition to part-time or civilian status?
We do. So we have it internal to Vermont, where I think we could do better within the service. So in the Army, they call it a reserve component career counselor. The Air Guard is called an in-service recruiter, and they're all posted at still active duty installation. And their job is to place active duty members in the reserve component, either the Guard or the reserve. Obviously, our preference is the Guard. What I think we can do better is, and we have been, I just asked my Inspector General about 3 months ago to do section of where are we with our retention program, but inclusive in retention is sponsorship. And that's a subtopic of retention. If we have folks coming off active duty, I think the presumption is, well, they're military, they must know what's going on. They don't understand the differences. And our job is to be better at educating them to make sure they understand the tools and benefits they have at their disposal. But we do have something in place that we're making better. Yes, ma'am.
I have another question. Is that okay? Where I can
Yes.
go. Do you talk to your troops about being eligible for VA benefits while they're still serving as part-time? Like traditional guardsmen, can they receive VA disability pay while they're off orders?
We do. And within family program, we have our veteran outreach specialists. How many do we have, Hank? We have.
So right now, 2 or 4, boss. So we have 4 filled. One got promoted to the VSO2 position, and then we have one in retirement coming up.
Yes, so that's at Veterans Affairs. They help them navigate those benefits, but even within the Guard, within family programs, we've got Andre Wing and his team.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, and his whole
Yeah.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're actually, that's a pretty robust team and they're really well versed in their job. The trick is finding the time, as you know, getting that information in front of folks that understand it. Because it is complex.
Thank you for the questions also. Any others, Ms. Rep?
May I'd just like to interject on that one is, what the general is speaking to is in their offices, by the way, right across the street. Those folks, and they work like dogs to help our veterans. And so I would say safely that it's probably safe to say their workload is heavy. I believe would
Yes.
agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
And I know we added, as you said, General, a couple of positions fortunately, because I know we were at one time down to two.
Well, and now we're back down to that, and we had two folks that have moved on.
Yeah, we got one
for other
position today
opportunities. Yeah,
that I'm aware of.
that's correct.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna go over and say goodbye to that individual today. But
Yeah, good idea. We'll do that on the way back. I'll make them back over to the car. We'll do the same.
Generally, if I could add, and Vice Chair, just to your question, when a serviceman, air or army gets to the 18-year point, they are afforded briefings wherever they're working, so Camp Johnson or the Armories or the Air Guard, where, 2 years prior to if they stay to 20, that they'll figure out what those veterans benefits are. So those briefings happen regularly for folks that have stayed with us that long and that are getting within 2 years of retirement. And then obviously the veterans benefits can apply to anybody that is of veteran status. So there's two things there, kind of the military retiree benefits and then also the veterans.
General, for the record, could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, sorry, Brigadier General Henry Harder, the Deputy Adjutant General.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Rep. Coffin?
Yes, going back to the recruiting retention. And I know I'm dating myself because it's been 20 plus years for this question, but as far as does the Guard still offer the Try One program where you can, and that was 20 years ago, and I know that helped bring people in from active duty.
Yeah, they do not. We've been advocating as adjutants general to go back to that. Even a 2-year contract would be helpful. Getting them in the door when you have the product to meet sells itself. It's been a challenge. Nobody wants to make that commitment.
Okay, I wasn't sure because I knew that was a really good recruiting tool back when I was younger.
It's classic military. It works and they stopped doing it.
Well, I hope we can get that back.
We're going to work on it. Madam Vice Chair, I had one other topic that we could discuss if you'd like. There was some
Absolutely.
question.
We have the time and we have you here.
There were some questions within Senate Government Operations about the use of the National Guard. These things are codified back to the late 1700s. And in law, in our case, under Title 32, Section 12304, and those subsections, they dictate how the Guard is used in certain environments. In essence, it's federalizing the Guard, for instance. In some instances, and I will quote chapter and verse here, I have my references, and I don't like going anywhere without my judge advocate general anyway. But the short version is, yes, the Guard can be used in certain instances by the president, federalized. What happens when they're federalized is they fall under Title 10, not Title 32. They're not purview to command by the adjutant general or the governor. There are instances, as we see in the southwest border, governors have objected to the use of National Guard troops and equipment at the border. And it's basically, thank you, understand your concern, and they're federalized anyway. So I anticipate, I just had a conversation 3 nights ago, got a phone call from the director of staff at Guard Bureau. What will be the stance of the governor? Well, it would probably be over objection to federalize the Vermont National Guard, but we also understand the process. So short answer, yes, he can. And whether I like it or not, in the end, it's been through Congress and it's been through the courts. If it is a lawful order, we don't have a choice.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that distinction, because I think that's it's a concern for some folks in the building and in the general public. And it's not widely understood, the separation between Title 10 and Title 32. So really appreciate you continuing to educate us on that subject.
Yes, ma'am. Every day is a learning experience for me as well.
For us as well. Any additional questions for either of the generals?
I think what I would close with, I've mentioned it certainly to my caucus co-chairs, and we had some email traffic. There is a growing appetite within the state partnership program to go beyond military to military. Our partnership with Austria exemplifies that. We've got, as I noted, the partnership with Norwich University and Teresian Military Academy. We have our agreement signed with the state of Vermont and Austria on apprenticeships. Secretary Curley and Commissioner Harrington actually traveled there in December to the province of Styria. So now we're looking at what we would call a sub-national partnership. Again, growing in commerce, trade, community development, things well beyond just military to military. Our job remains one of working with the military, but also to facilitate those relationships. What I've broached recently is I would really like to see a growth in, I think I'd mentioned it, legislative engagement. Because that in and of itself, we all run in different circles. If I go to the embassy for a country brief, it's not just the defense attaché. It's USAID, it's Chargé d'Affaires, it's all of the agencies that would be interested in, and we can facilitate that. So I'll keep working on that. Hopefully I can get it done this term. We'll see.
I also would like to take this opportunity to mention that for legislators and others in the building, the Guard is going to have a reception on February 6th at 4 o'clock in the Cedar Creek Room. All who are working here in this building are welcome to attend. You can meet your Guard members and understand a little bit more from them personally about their mission and their vision for the future. Really appreciate you providing this opportunity, and I
Thank you, ma'am.
believe there will also be a legislative breakfast later on in the month, and the date eludes me.
April 1st, ma'am.
April 1st, okay.
Those got snatched up so quickly.
Okay, thank you. So not until April 1st, but that's good. It's great to, I think, provide various opportunities for folks in the building to interact with you. And maybe not necessarily 1 week right after the other, but if they keep seeing your faces, then the opportunity will present itself for them to ask the questions that have been burning in their minds, or, you know, just anything that has come up in the meantime.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
appreciate the
very much
opportunity.
For your presence here today.
Present.
Appreciate it, and thank you for
You have to say
your presence and present. Thank you, and we will not be coming back after lunch. We will see everyone on Tuesday after the House floor and caucuses and lunch, unless we have a meeting scheduled, which we will look at our agendas frequently, right? So we know when we're supposed to be back on Tuesday, but with